You know, paradigms control the results in your life. They have the power over everything, from your relationships to your income. And when you shift your paradigm, everything in your life improves. It's an exciting idea, isn't it? Well, I'm Bob Proctor, and I want to welcome you to Paradigm Shift, where we're going to teach you how to make dramatic improvements in the quality of your life. Think about your life for a moment. I want you to think about the results in your life and think about the concept of a paradigm shift. What is a paradigm? How are paradigms formed? How can they be changed? That's what I want to talk to you about. And I think as you get into this, you're really going to like it. Ask yourself this question. Why would anyone look at a tremendous opportunity offering them time and money freedom and then walk away from it? Do you know, you hear people day in, day out say, I wished I had this, I wished I had that, I wished I had this car, I wish we could take this vacation. Why did they walk away from it? Well, most people say, well, I really don't know. I don't think there's an answer to that. No, there is an answer to that. You see, people are walking away from opportunities every day, and the biggest opportunity they have, they carry within them. Napoleon Hill one time said, don't go searching for opportunity, but reach out and embrace them right where they are. You see, the people that walk away from the opportunities are being controlled by paradigms. They really are. They're being controlled by something, and they're not even sure what it is. And think of this. Paradigms are nothing but a multitude of habits, and they're other people's habits. These habits have been passed along from one generation to the next. It's rather sad because most of the things that the average individual does on any given day, they didn't even decide to do. They're programmed to do it. It's literally programmed right into the genes. And that's what's called a paradigm. What you're dealing with is habits. You see, paradigms are nothing but a multitude of habits. Paradigm is it's sort of a buzzword of this particular generation, and it really explains what subconscious conditioning is all about. Well, in this particular part of the paradigm shift, I want to talk to you about paradigms. And I'm going to talk to you about why people don't change them and how they could change them. You see, paradigms are the very reason why success for most people is a puzzle. And it really is a puzzle. They give it everything they've got, and they fall short. They get going, and they say, I'm going to do it this time, and they quit. I'm going to go on a diet, and they blow it. You know, why does this happen? Well, they don't really know. And success is a real puzzle. Go and ask a dozen people what the meaning of success is, and they really don't know. Ask them to how to become successful. They don't know that either. You see, we are the product of somebody else's habitual way of thinking. And I believe it's time to change. So let's take a look at how we can change. You know, Joel Barker wrote a book on paradigm, and he said to ignore the power of paradigms to influence your judgment. Yes, to put yourself at risk when exploring the future. Now think about that. To ignore the power of paradigms, most people do ignore the power of paradigms because they don't understand what a paradigm is. If you don't know what it is, you'll just automatically ignore it. So he said to ignore the power of paradigms to influence your judgment. Yes, to put yourself at risk when exploring the future. Well, most people do that. But he also pointed out to be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm. Now, if we're going to change them, we're going to have to understand what they are. If we're going to change them, we're going to have to understand, I believe, how they're formed. We're going to have to understand what we have to do. And get this, it's well worth studying. Because when you change your paradigm, you can literally write your own check. You can decide where you're going to go and what you're going to do. You start to determine how much you're going to earn, how much fun you're going to have, the trips you're going to take, where you're going to go, and what you're going to do. Now, to start off with, there's only two things you really have to know to succeed. Sounds pretty simple. First one, you have to know where you are. You know, most people don't know where they are. I owe a man named Ray Stanford just a tremendous debt. Ray Stanford was a guy 45 years ago who got me to sit down and really look at how I was living. He said, Bob, do you like the way you're living? And I said, no, not particularly. He said, do you think I'm a happy guy? And I said, yeah, you seem pretty happy to me. He said, have you ever seen me sick? I had to admit I hadn't. He said, have you ever seen me when I was broke? And again, I had to admit I hadn't. Well, he told me, he says, you've got to be one of the most miserable people I've ever met. And I was. I was an unhappy human being. Yet he said, you're always sick. Now, he said, you don't have a terminal illness, but you always got a headache or a cold or something. And he said, you're always broke. Oh, I was. I was always broke. I never had any money. He said, why don't you change it? Well, you know, it never really entered my mind that I could. It never crossed my mind that I had the ability to sit down and decide exactly what I wanted to do. Now, I said there's only two things you have to know to succeed. Well, let's take a look at the second one. The second one is you've got to know where you're going. You not only have to know where you are, you have to know where you're going. Now, you see, I was not in a good place. I was unhappy, I was sick, and I was broke. And because that's where I was, it was almost like I had to stay there. But you see, I was 26 years old. I had been trying to change results since I was a kid, and nothing seemed to happen. So I guess by the time I was 26, I just assumed this is my lot in life. But he said, that doesn't have to be the way it is. He said, your present results have nothing to do with your future unless you let them. Now, he said, your results are neither good nor bad. Everything just is. Take a look at the room you're standing in. The room's neither big nor small. The room just is. It's only big or small relative to something else. Look at a bigger room. The room you're in is small. Look at a smaller room. The room you're in is big. Well, he said, your results are neither good nor bad. Now, that has to do with the law of polarity. Law of polarity decrees there's two sides to everything. It's also the law of relativity. We have to relate things. So he said, you know, relative to most of the population of the world, you live like Solomon in all his splendor and glory. So that's not the deal. He said, you're not where you want to be. So he said, let's ignore where you're at now that you know where you are, and let's think of where you want to go. Where do you really want to go? Well, you know, it had been so long since I dreamed that I really didn't know. And you know what I found? I found most people don't know. But if we sit down and take a pen and a pad and ask ourselves, what do I really want to do? We can do it. Now, you see, there's a part of the paradigm that stops us from doing that because we immediately asked, how am I going to do it? How doesn't matter. Hillary didn't know how to get to the top of the mountain until after he got there. I had the good fortune of working with Edmund Hillary on 3 different occasions. The only thing I saw different about him and anybody else was his size and his determination and his vision. See, no one had ever been to the top of Mount Everest. No one had ever stood on top of the world until Hillary did. There's over 1,000 people have done it since then. You see? What about the Wright brothers? No one had ever flown, but they did. You see, it doesn't matter how you're going to do it. What matters is what you're going to do. So think about this. Who are you? Now, that's what Ray started off by asking me. He says, who are you? I said, what do you mean? I said, I'm Bob. No, he said, that's not who you are. He said, that's your name. Where's the guy getting that? You know, I'm not my name. Now, he said, Bob and Proctor is your name, but it's not you. He said, they're 2 words. You use as your name. You could change them if you want. You probably won't. But that's not you. And I said, well, this is me. No, he said, that's your body. You've never heard anybody phone into work and say, body's not coming in today. It's sick. Think of it. You never say anybody say, I am hand, I am leg. It's my hand, my leg, my name, my body. These are all things we have. We've got to really stop and think, who am I? Now, you know, when you do that, you're going to come up with some pretty good answers. We are spiritual beings. That's who we are. We are a soul. We don't have one. We are one. We are spiritual beings. We have been gifted with an intellect. We have intellectual factors. We've got magnificent mental tools locked up inside of us, and we live in a physical body. Now, it's how we use our intellectual factors that's going to dictate our emotional state. And our emotional state is very likely going to control how we behave. Now, we're going to get into a lot of this later on, but, you know, that's the way it is for right now. Now, I have mentioned 1,000 times, if I've mentioned once, we think in pictures. You see? Now, if you think in pictures, I am spirit, I have an intellect to live in a physical body, and you get a picture when you're thinking of yourself, what picture? You get the physical picture. It's the picture that reflects back from the mirror. It's the picture of the thing we dress, and so we think this is us. This isn't us at all. We've got to get an image of ourselves. We're spirit. Nobody's ever seen spirit. We see the expression of spirit. Spirit's creative. We're creative. Now, think about this for a moment. Dr. Thurman Fleet in 1934 realized that we had a real problem. No one ever saw the higher side of a person's personality. So he said, I'm going to make a picture. And he said, there's a picture of the mind and the body. Now, I want to recommend you do what I've been doing now for close to 40 years. You see, I had been studying this for around 5 years, 8 years, something like that, before this picture was presented to me. Leland Val Vanderwall presented this to me, and when he did like that, everything came into order in my mind. I had been studying all this material about the mind, but I didn't have an image. See, most people, when they think of the mind, they think of the brain. The brain isn't the mind any more than a fingernail is. Brain is an electronic switching station. It's your brain that you activate to set up new vibrations in your body. And the vibration causes you to act the way you act. Your vibration dictates what you attract. You know that everything coming into your life you attract. So what we have to learn to do is, how do we work with the mind? Well, I'll tell you what I do. I see my head as my mind and everything from the neck down as being the body. Is that the way it is? No, of course not. But that's an image that I'm working with. All right? Now we take the mind and we break it into two parts. We have the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Now I think there's probably 150 names for each. You know, the conscious mind as well as the subconscious. Some areas they call the subconscious the unconscious, and some call it universal intelligence. Call it whatever you want. We don't care what you call it. Let's understand how it works. Your conscious mind gives you the ability to choose. It's very powerful. Your subconscious mind does not have that ability. Now, your subconscious mind is your thinking mind. Or pardon me, your subconscious mind is your feeling mind. The conscious mind is a thinking mind. All right? The conscious mind is your thinking mind, and you have hooked up to your conscious mind your sensory factors. So let's look at this for a moment. What do most people think? Well, they think according to what's going on outside of them, because these sensory factors are picking up that information. And then they feed it in, and they think in pictures, and they turn it over to their subconscious, and that's what causes them to feel the way they feel. You see, what you think and impress upon your subconscious controls the vibration you're in. That controls how you act and produces the results that we're getting. Now, you can think anything you want, but when you were a child, you couldn't. Let me back it up. Your subconscious mind is wide open to, you can put in anything you want. When you were a baby, your subconscious mind was wide open. See, whatever went on around you, come right into your subconscious mind. Now, right now, you can block everything out of your subconscious mind. You can do it with your conscious. You can mentally choose the ideas that you put in. You take a look at something, you don't like it, just reject it. See, the conscious mind has the ability to accept or reject ideas. The subconscious mind doesn't have that ability. You know, when you're a baby, your mind is wide open. You can put anything in it you want. At birth, a baby is a linguistic genius. It's literally a linguistic genius. You can teach a baby any language. I have some associates of mine in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. They have a little 4-year-old boy speaks 4 languages. Do you know that you can teach a baby to read before it can talk? Now somebody will say, well, I don't believe that. Well, then you probably wouldn't do it. The reason we don't teach babies to read before they can talk is because we don't get any feedback. We don't understand how their mind works. We don't understand that we can program it. And yet we are programming it. Whatever we're talking about, whatever's going on around that baby is going right into the baby's subconscious mind. Where did you get the idea that you went to work to earn money? Do you know that working is the worst way to earn money? You go to work for satisfaction. That's why we should be doing what we absolutely love to do. You provide service to earn money. Why do you think 90-some% of the population have absolutely no idea how to earn money? Now think about this for a moment. This is very, very important that you understand this. All right? It's super important that you understand it. Because if you don't understand it, you're going to continue doing what you're doing. How are you at earning money? Are you having trouble with it? Well, if you're having trouble with it, it's because of the ideas that are programmed right into your subconscious mind. You see, if you're working around people that think it's difficult to earn money when you're a baby, then you're going to grow up thinking it's difficult to earn money. If your parents went to school, you'll probably go to school. If your parents didn't, you probably won't. If you blame the weather and what's going on outside for the disease that you may have, then you'll probably do the same thing. Why do you like the food you like? You like it because you're programmed to eat it. You see, you didn't choose to like that food. You choose to like the food that you're programmed to eat. Now, when that programming takes place, it's genetic and environmental. At around the age of 4 or 5, The mind's already programmed. It's the ideas going in over and over and over and over again. They become fixed in your subconscious mind. We call that a paradigm. And then you begin to think. Now, you can think anything you want, but your paradigm is controlling your behavior and controlling your results. Think of this for a moment. Let's suppose you're earning $50,000 a year. What do you think the odds are of you thinking the thoughts of a person that's earning $250,000 a year? You're not going to do it. As a matter of fact, you'll probably think they're different. They're no different than you or me. The only difference is in their thinking. You can think anything you want, but the paradigm seems to control the way we think. Now, we've got to make up our mind. We're going to stop that. The mind, you can think anything you want. It's your thinking mind. Think anything you want to think, and don't let the paradigm control you. It's a beautiful concept once you start to understand it. So, really think about this. All right? Now, your paradigm controls your logic. Now, think of this for a moment. We never flew in airplanes because anything heavier than air is attracted towards the center of the world. It was totally illogical to think that we could build something of metal and have it fly through the air carrying people. That was illogical, but we're doing it. See, it's logical now, but it wasn't when the Wright brothers got the plane off the ground. A person that's earning $50,000 a year, if they go and talk to one of their buddies about earning $250,000 a year, they'll say you're crazy. That is totally illogical. Well, let's think for a moment. If the paradigm's controlling the logic, if the paradigm is controlling the results, we want to change the results. Wouldn't it make good sense then to start thinking about things that are totally illogical? So when you're looking at where you are and looking at where you're going, I think we want to get some ideas in our mind that maybe are a little scary. You see, if your goal doesn't scare and excite you at the same time, it's probably not a good goal. What do you really want to do? Now, I was sitting in a fire hall when I picked up Think and Grow Rich many years ago. That was the best job I had ever had. I only worked 7 days and 7 nights a month, and I could sleep there all night, go golfing all day. I was earning above average income. They had never had anyone that they let go. Only one person since 1934 quit the job, and yet I quit. It was totally illogical for me to do that. Why did I do it? I did it because I wanted to change my life. I wanted to change the people I associated with. I wanted to change everything. Now, Maslow said you're either going to step forward into growth or you're going to step back into safety. That's a decision that you've got to make. If you step forward into growth, it's going to be scary. If you step back into safety, you're going to stay where you are. So let's think for a moment. Where are you and where you want to go? It's a good question. It's a question most people never ask themselves. I want you to stop and think of what it was like when you were a child. What kind of an environment were you born into? Because that's where your paradigm's formed. Stop and go back and take a look at your ancestors. You see, you might ask, how did you get here? Well, there's a little particle of energy from mom and a little particle of energy from dad come swimming along and they joined together. That was the nucleus of you. Do you know that all mom's DNA and all dad's DNA is locked up in those little particles of energy? All their habit patterns are there. Why do you think you have some of the little idiosyncrasies that they have? Why do you think you look so much like your parents? Do you think that's an accident? See, the truth is most people never spend any time thinking about this. I want you to think about it. Because your way of life is controlled to an enormous degree by your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, their grandparents, and it's passed along from one generation to the next. I'll give you an indication of what I'm talking about. It's kind of cute, but it's true. I was born and raised in northern Ontario in Canada. My wife was born and raised in the southern part of the United States, in Birmingham, Alabama, and in Pensacola, Florida. Two totally different cultures. Now, we came together, and we started to go out together, but then we got married. And we're out shopping one day, and I said, you know what I'd like is some turnip. She says, okay. So I pick one up. She says, what are you going to do with that? And I said, I'm going to eat it. Well, she says, I'm not eating that. And I said, why not? She says, that's the root of the turnip. I said, it's what? She says, that's the root of the turnip. I'd never heard it called that. I'd never even thought of that. It was just a turnip. Yet she said, we feed that to the pigs. Well, I said, what do you eat? She said, we eat the green of the turnip. I don't think I'd ever seen a turnip green. I said, isn't that strange? We give that to the pigs. Here she was, raised where they ate the green of the turnip and threw the root away. I grew up, we eat the root of the turnip, threw the green away. Now I put the turnip back in the bin and I walked away. I mean, I'm not going to fight over a turnip. And I got thinking about it, and I thought, I wonder how many other ideas we operate like that. You see, that had to do with where she was raised. Now, do you want to know the truth? We don't eat turnip in our house anymore. We just don't eat it. I eat it if I go to my mother's or my sister's, but, think about it. She was raised in a totally different culture than I was raised in. I do work over in Kuching and Kota Kinabalu and Kuala Lumpur. Totally different culture. When we have breaks for seminars here in North America, we have coffee breaks, refreshment breaks. Not in Malaysia. We have prayer breaks. Totally different culture. Now ask yourself, why are you like you are? I want you to go back and think of yourself, just subconscious mind wide open. You're a little baby. What were the people talking about? What were they doing? What was their thoughts towards income? Because they're the thoughts that you've got planted in your subconscious mind. Again, you see, it's the repetition of these ideas going in over and over and over again that has programmed us. Now, in this series, The Paradigm Shift, you've got to really understand how paradigms were formed if you're going to be effective at changing them. See, I can tell you how to change the paradigm, but if you don't understand how it's formed, it wouldn't make any sense. Some of the things I'm going to tell you to do to change your paradigm are going to seem silly. They're going to seem immature. Well, that's all right. Do them anyway. Do you know you're going to find that the multimillionaires in the world, the people that are happy, the people that are alive and vibrant, they do things a little different than everybody else. They march to the tune of their own drummer. You'll often find people, I was 71 on my last birthday, and people say you should slow down. I think that's nuts. I should speed up. I'm really just getting warmed up. You see, I don't think we have to slow down. I think what we have to do is calm down. We have to pace ourselves. We have to do things in a very calm, confident manner. You can go at warp speed if you're doing that. I'll work in 3 or 4 different continents in the same week. Think nothing of it. I can get on a plane and go to sleep just the same as I can get in bed at home and go to sleep. Do you know why? I've programmed myself to live that way. Do you know the way you're living is according to the program? Who decided on your program? Did you pick it or did someone else pick it? Now think about it. I want you to be super honest when you're analyzing your results. Really take a look at where you are. And then ask yourself, why don't you change your results? Well, we really don't know. Why are you doing? What time do you start work? I always say everybody should belong to the 6 o'clock club. You want to get up at 6 o'clock, ready to fire your engines. Good time to wake up and study. Talk about studying. How much time do you spend studying? What do you study? You see, if you really want to change your life, you've got to get locked into study. You've got to figure out why you're doing what you're doing, how to change it. Now, remember I said we're spiritual beings and we live in physical bodies? That is no small thing. That's not something just to discuss at church or at the temple or at the mosque. This is something that we really want to focus on. Where is spirit? Spirit's omnipresent. Spirit's 100% evenly present in all places at the same time. Spirit's all powerful. Do you know that all the power there ever was or there ever will be is omnipresent? It's 100% evenly present in all places at the same time. This is very, very vital information, and we've got to think about it. It isn't just something we read and say, isn't that nice? You have infinite potential. What are you doing with it? There's 2 things we're not taught in school. There's many things we're not taught in school, but there's 2 things that we're not taught that are vitally important if you really want to make a paradigm shift and make things happen in your life. Number 1, you have to learn how to make decisions. Absolutely essential. Most people have a difficult time with it. And you've got to learn how to earn money. You've got to learn how to earn money. See, the more money you have, the more effective you can become. Now, understand this. Money's just used for 2 things. 1, it's to make you comfortable. And 2, it enables you to extend the service that you render far beyond your own physical presence. Now, I don't go into a lot of money or a lot about money in this particular lesson. I just want to touch on it. We will cover money specifically in one lesson. See, money is to make you comfortable. The more comfortable you are, the more creative you can become. And the other purpose of it is to extend the service that you render far beyond your own presence. So you can actually be providing service when you're sleeping. If you're providing service when you're sleeping, you can be earning money while you're sleeping. Now, I was sitting in a hotel here in the city last night sleeping, but I can assure you I was earning money while I was sleeping. See, I'm of the opinion the mailman should never pass your door without leaving a check. Now, I know that's probably appealing to you. And how do you get that way? You get that way by making up your mind that you're going to write the next program for your subconscious mind. You're not going to let somebody else do it. So we start to evaluate where we're at, what we're doing. How much time do you spend thinking? And what do you spend time thinking about? I spend a lot of time in planes. I am leaving here where I'm shooting this particular series in Dallas, and I'm going to fly immediately to London. And then I'm going to go from there right back to Toronto, and from there out to Utah. Now, this is all happening in a week. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the air. I was flying over to Kuala Lumpur from Toronto every month for approximately 5 years. It's 25 hours in the air from Toronto to KL. And if you go any further, you're coming back. So it's a lot of riding. And I have that time for me. No disturbances. I play with words and numbers. I spend all the time in the air playing with words and numbers. And I'll build things in my mind. And then I lay down a track that I want to run on, how I'm going to execute it. Now, when I get a great idea, I'll write it down. If it's still a good idea a week later, I know that I'm onto something. And then I'll put together a team of people to execute it. You see, I think you should have a team working with you. And if you're going to make a paradigm shift, that's vitally important. So think. You've got to make decisions. You know, Napoleon Hill said that the people that win in life make decisions very fast and change them very slow if and when they change them at all, like that. You're going to find that people that have problems in life, they make their decisions very slow and they change them frequently and without any cause. Why would an individual do that? It's part of the paradigm. Take a look at how you're living. Start to analyze. What do you do when you get out of bed in the morning? There's a pattern that you follow. The pattern is the expression of the paradigm. How much time do you spend sitting down to do nothing but create big ideas to improve the quality of your life? Don't say you haven't got time. Everybody gets exactly the same amount of time. We get all there is. So what are you doing with your life? How do you spend your days? I want you to become super aware of the thought patterns that you entertain. Start to monitor your own thinking. Don't spend time thinking of why you can't do something. Spend time thinking of how you can. You see, you're capable of doing anything. Now, understand this. You're either going to go forward into growth or back into safety. Now, I want you to also remind you that there's no shortcuts, but you can take quantum leaps through the transference of experience and information. Paradigms control the results in your life. They have the power over everything in your life, from your relationships to your income. And when you shift your paradigm, everything in your life improves. Hello, I'm Bob Proctor, and I want to welcome you to Paradigm Shift, where we are going to teach you how to make quantum leaps in the improvement of the results in your life. You know, to do this, we have to get in and talk about the mind, because paradigms, it's all about the mind. If you stop the next 10 people walking down the street and ask them what a paradigm is, they're going to look at you and they're not going to know the answer to it. So you may not know the answer to it, but it's a part of the conditioning in our mind. And to help us in this particular show, we're going to be talking about developing the higher faculties of the mind. Now, when it comes to talking about the mind, we've got to get an image to work with. You see, no one's ever seen the mind, and we think in pictures. If I asked you to think of your automobile, you'd get an image of the automobile on the screen of your mind. If I asked you to think of the refrigerator in your kitchen, you'd get an image of the refrigerator on the screen of your mind. However, when I asked you to think of your mind, what image do you get? You see, most people don't have an image. And unfortunately, when there's no image, there's confusion. When there's confusion, we immediately start thinking of something else. And that's precisely why most people stay stuck. You see, our mind controls our results, and it's our results that we want to change. And if we're going to change the results, we're going to have to change what's going on inside. Now, Dr. Thurman Fleet, back around 1934, was interested in the healing arts, and he said, we're just treating the body. If you're going to have any health, you've got to treat the whole person. So he originated this image of the mind. I've been using it now for 38 years. I have shared this image with people all over the world, and I have been focusing on helping people improve their income. I've watched people going from earning a couple of thousand a year to over $1 million because they understood how to make the necessary changes inside so that they can enjoy the changes outside. Now, you know, Napoleon Hill was a phenomenal author, and he talked a lot about the mind. He talked a lot about our thinking. He talked a lot about our conscious mind and the way we think. Do you know that there's a thought power flowing into our consciousness, and we can think anything we want? Anything. Play with it for a moment. Start to let your mind wander. You can think of the beach. You can think of a lake. You can think of fishing. You can think of golfing. You can think of playing with a child. Just like that, you can change your thoughts and your consciousness. But you know something? That doesn't necessarily change your behavior. You see, your thoughts are in the top half. That's what we refer to as the conscious mind. The subconscious is what's controlling the behavior of your body. It controls every action you're involved in. Now, your actions control your results. In Napoleon Hill's book, he said an educated person is not necessarily a person with an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. He said an educated person is a person who has so developed the faculties of their mind that they can acquire anything they want or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. Do you know, I was doing a seminar for 2,000 school teachers a number of years ago. I couldn't find one teacher that could tell us what the faculties of our mind were. Now, if they didn't know what they were, they're sure not going to be able to teach us how to develop them. Do you know that we have mental faculties inside, and that's where all our power lies? And what we want to learn to do is develop those faculties. Now, let's come back to this little drawing. And we take a look at it, and I want you to take a look now at these little antennae that are sticking up from the part where the feelings are resident. Why do we feel the way we feel? We feel the way we feel because of the vibration we're in. See, feelings are a word that we invented to describe our conscious awareness of the vibration we're in. Now, we have sensory factors. We can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And do you know that you and I are conditioned to live through those sensory factors? We look at our bank account, and that tells us where we're at financially. We take a look at x-rays or listen to the doctor, and that tells us where we are physically insofar as our health is concerned. But does it really? Why do we do that? Well, we do it because we've been conditioned to do it. As a little child, we were told to listen to what I'm telling you. Well, you look at this. And then we went to school, and what did they do? They give us a sheet of paper that they called a report card. And on that report card were all the marks that we'd achieved on our last exam. And we started to let that report card dictate what kind of person we are. Does it really? Not at all. But that's the idea we're operating with, and that's the idea that's controlling many of our lives. You see, what the report card really did was tell you where your mind was at for a few minutes, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. It has absolutely nothing to do with your potential, and it has absolutely nothing to do with what you're capable of accomplishing in your life. Now, let's take a look at these higher faculties. We have reason, memory, perception, will, intuition, and imagination. And that's really what I want to talk to you about here on Paradigm Shift today. Because as we start to understand these faculties and how they work, we can literally start to take control over our life. Let's take a look at the reasoning factor. What do we do with the reasoning factor? We choose our thoughts. You see, there is a power that flows to and through us. And as that power is flowing into our consciousness, we can make anything out of it we want. That is really where all creation starts in our life. You can think anything you want. As a matter of fact, that's where your freedom comes in. You know, Viktor Frankl, a Viennese psychiatrist, a Jewish psychiatrist, that spent the war years in a camp, he said that while he was in that camp, regardless of the intellectual or physical abuse he was subjected to, no one could cause him to think something he didn't want to think. Our reasoning factor is the mental tool that we think with. Now, do you know, all the great leaders all down through history have all been in complete and unanimous agreement that we become what we think about. What do you think about? Do you want to know what you're thinking about most of the time? Take a look at the results you're getting. That'll tell you exactly what's going on inside. Do you know, the sad truth is most people don't think. I had the very good fortune of working with Earl Nightingale for 5 years. He was considered the dean of personal motivation. He was an incredible human being. He and Lloyd Conant really had an impact on my life. But Earl used to say if most people said what they were thinking, they would be speechless. Now, you may laugh at that, but think about it for a few minutes. Dr. Ken McFarland, he said 2% of the people think, 3% think they think, and 95% would actually rather die than think. Henry Ford one time pointed out that thinking is the hardest work there is, which is the probable reason so few people engage in it. Now you say, well, everybody thinks. No, the truth is hardly anyone thinks. Stand back and watch people's behavior. Just study their behavior. And you know something? You're going to quickly realize they'd never do what they were doing if they were thinking. Or listen to their conversation. They'd never say what they were saying if they were thinking. The truth is, most people don't think. Well, how do they function? Well, they've tricked themselves into believing that mental activity is thinking. They're just letting whatever's going on outside of them control what's going on inside. Now, that's rather sad, but it's true. Now, go to the next one, memory. Do you know the average individual wanders around their whole life saying, I've got a terrible memory, I've got a terrible memory. I remember one time I was working with Harry Lorraine. Harry flew in from New York to Toronto. He picked up a Newsweek magazine, published every week. When he got to Toronto, it was a recent magazine that day. When he got to Toronto, he gave it to someone and asked them to cut the spine off it and go and duplicate all the pages. Now, on each page, he had taken the number of a page with black marker and big letters and rewritten the number of the page. There was around 3,000 people at that conference. Everyone was given a page. And you know, you could stand up during his presentation and you could yell out, page 26, and start reading. And wherever you stopped, he would continue. Harry Lorraine had a phenomenal memory. He stood at the door and met most people coming in, or a good number of them. And when he started, he asked them, he said, if anybody was at the door, if I met you, stand up for a few moments. He not only told everybody what their name was, if it was a difficult name to pronounce, he would spell it. Harry had a phenomenal memory. Now, you know, I remember asking Harry one time, I said, Harry, how long do you remember something? He said, till I want to forget it. You see, the truth is there's no such thing as a bad memory. There's only weak memories. Think of this for a moment. These mental faculties that we've got, they're something like our physical muscles. They're our mental muscles. And if we want to develop our mental faculties, we're going to have to exercise them. I want you to imagine if I left this arm in a sling and then lifted weights with this arm every day, what would happen? I think you'd quickly recognize that this arm would be rendered useless in a relatively short period of time, and this one would develop very powerful muscles. I often say it's fairly obvious I haven't done either of these things, but if I had, you know what would happen. You know, it's exactly the same with our mind. If we don't exercise our mind, it becomes lethargic. It becomes useless. It's been said, what we don't use, we lose. Now, take a look at those two mental faculties, reason and memory. We have the ability to think anything we want, and we become what we think about. We've got a phenomenal memory. We can remember anything. You see, memory is developed through association. Not just association, but ridiculous association. I want to recommend you go and buy a good book on memory. Now, if you get a good book on memory, you're going to find that there's many chapters in the book. One is to remember names, another one's numbers, another one's places. If you want to remember names, that's what most people would really like to do, just take the section on names and study that, study nothing else, and work at it. Do you know, if you worked at that every day for 90 days, just developing the technique of remembering names, pretty soon you would be considered an extraordinary thing by all your friends. They'd say you'd been talented. They'd say you've been born with a photographic memory. The truth is you haven't. Not any more than I have or anybody else. So as you work at this, everything in your life is going to change. Now let's take a look at the next mental faculty, is perception. What are we talking about here? We're talking about our point of view. We're talking about how we look at a situation. You'll often see two people in total opposition, and they both think they're right. The truth is they both are right. You know, I have a book that I hold up in a seminar. It's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I've been carrying this book with me since 1963. And on the one side, it's a black leather cover on the book. On the one side, it says Think and Grow Rich in gold stamping. Gold's almost worn off now, but it is there. On the other side, there's nothing. Now, I will frequently stand in front of a person and hold that book up. They're staring at it. All they can see is what's on the cover of the book. And then I look at the person and I say, I'm going to tell you there's nothing printed on the cover of that book. Am I right or wrong? And they'll immediately say I'm wrong. Now, I said, if I insist that there's nothing on the cover of the book, what have I done? I have drawn your conscious attention to what is printed on the cover of the book. You see, I am causing you to focus on what is in front of you. I'm not causing you to look at it from my point of view. I'm causing you to look at it from your point of view. And they'll insist that I'm wrong. And then I turn the book around. Well, they don't want to let go of the fact I'm wrong, but I said there's nothing on the book. And there's nothing on the book where I was looking at. What was I doing? I was looking at the opposite side of the same thing. We were both looking at the book. Now, I point out there's two sides to the book. And since that person's facing me or I'm facing them, what I consider the right side of the book, they'll consider the left side. What I consider the left, they consider the right. Think of this. This whole universe operates by law. Dr. Wernher von Braun said that the natural laws of this universe are so precise that we don't have any difficulty building spaceships. We can send people to the moon, and we can time the landing with the precision of a fraction of a second. One of these laws is the law of polarity. The law of polarity decrees that everything has an opposite. It's the flip side to the coin, the right side to the book, the left side, the front, the back. Well, you might consider this the next time you disagree with someone. And you might be saying they're wrong. They're right from their point of view. It might not be taking them where they want to go, but their point of view is still just as every bit as accurate and as right as yours. So you see, it's not what we're looking at, it's how we're looking at it. You know, until I was 26 years old, I looked at the side of me that wasn't capable of doing anything. I never accomplished anything. Nothing. I failed at almost everything I ever did. School, I went into the Navy, I went in an ordinary seaman, come out an able seaman. Then I went to work in factories and bars, and I was sitting in a fire hall when I picked up Napoleon Hill's book. And I started to study it. And that got me to think. I started to use my higher faculties. And I stopped, and I used to think, wonder what I am capable of doing. You see, what I was doing, I was looking at the downside of my life. I wasn't looking at the upside. I was looking at the things I had done wrong. I wasn't looking at my potential. And you know, that book caused me to totally shift my perception of who I was and what I was. I started to understand some of these higher faculties, and my whole life began to change. You know, I went from earning $4,000 a year in 1 year to $175,000. Then it went over $1 million. I have shared these ideas with people all over the world for the past 38 years. I am firmly convinced I can show anyone how to become a millionaire simply by shifting their paradigm. And if you're going to shift your paradigm, you're going to have to learn how to use these higher faculties. Now take a look at the next mental faculty, is the will. The will is a marvelous tool. The will gives us the ability to concentrate. You see, I mentioned earlier that there's a power that flows to and through us. And as it flows through us, we give it direction. Do you know, the will to the mind is something like what a magnifying glass is to the sun. I can hold a magnifying glass, and I did when I was a child, and you probably did too, and we could cause the sun to focus. We would marshal that energy and bring it to a white-hot bead, possibly on a piece of paper, maybe leaves, sometimes on ourselves. And what did we do? We started to fire with it. We took the heat of the energy, focused it, brought it to a white-hot bead. Well, you know, that's what the mind does with the will. The will gives us the ability to take an idea and hold that idea and zero right in on something. You're going to find that all top salespeople have a highly evolved will. All top leaders have a highly evolved will. You see, it's the will that gives us the ability to focus. Think of this for a moment. Remember, we have those sensory factors. We can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Well, they're forever picking up information from outside. All of nature's creatures respond to outside stimuli. Well, the will picks up information from outside, and it scatters our brain, literally. So we've got a zillion pictures. Most people have more ideas on the screen of their mind than you'll find in an encyclopedia in a matter of a minute or two. But the person who has a highly evolved will, they think, they build an image, and they focus on that image. And they're the people that really make things happen. It's the salesperson that focuses on the sale. It's the leader that focuses on the objective. You know, I've got a couple of statues of Napoleon in my home. And I've got him there for a couple of reasons. I don't think he was a particularly nice guy, but he was a very powerful leader. One of his biographers called him organized victory. Another one said he had immense capacity for sustained concentration. You know, one of his biographers quoted him. He said, "I see only the objective, the obstacle must give way." Well, Napoleon had a highly evolved will. Now let's move on to the next one, intuition. You know, we talk about a woman's intuition. Women don't have any more intuition than men do. Intuition is a mental faculty. You'll often hear people refer to it as a sixth sense. It's not a sixth sense. We have 5 senses. We can hear, see, smell, taste, touch. Intuition is a mental faculty, and it's something everyone has. Everyone has a highly evolved intuition. Your intuitive factor is what picks up other people's vibration. When you wander in the home and somebody says, "What's wrong?" you say, "Nothing." The dog even knows something's wrong. You'll see it shooting under the table. You'll pick up people that are moody people. What do we mean by that? Well, they're either in a good mood or a bad mood. In other words, there's good energy around them or there's bad energy around them. And some people, you want to take their temperature before you even speak to them because you don't know whether they're going to kiss you or kick you. Your intuitive factor is that mental faculty that picks up the energy around a person. You see, your mental faculties really tell you a lot. Your body is a molecular structure. Your body is a mass of energy and a very high speed of vibration. You know, Simeon Kirlian, way back in the 30s, perfected a form of photography where you can photograph the energy field around a body. Now, as you change the images in your mind, the density and the color of this energy will change. Well, it's your intuitive factor that picks up that energy. And you see, when you're dealing with the mind, there isn't any such thing as time or space. You could have a good friend that's wandering down the Champs-Élysées in Paris, and you could be on Fifth Avenue in New York, and you'll get a strong vibration that you should phone that person. You're picking up their energy, their thinking. You see, thought waves are cosmic waves that penetrate all time and space. Well, your intuitive factor is what picks up their thought vibrations. You know, I've got a very highly involved intuitive factor, and it isn't by accident. I've consciously and deliberately worked at developing it because I'm working with audiences all the time. You're going to find that most musicians have a highly evolved intuitive factor. They may not be aware of it, but they're working with the energy of the audience all the time. Well, when you develop your intuition, you've got one of the most phenomenal faculties that you're ever going to find, and it's going to work for you. And you can do that. Now, let's go to the final one. We're going to the imagination. Someone said it's the greatest nation in the world. Napoleon Hill said the imagination is the most powerful, most miraculous, inconceivably powerful force that the world's ever known. Think of it, an imagination. Do you know, we can build anything in our imagination. Do you know that's where all creation begins in your life? Van Gogh was a great artist. He was asked one time, he said, how he did such beautiful work. He said, I dream my painting, and then I paint my dream. Well, you know that's what you do. That's what I do. Everything's created twice, once on a mental plane and once on a physical plane. Do you know that the internet has always been here? It took someone's imagination to see it. How do you really want to live? Do you know that your imagination will take you there? Do you know what our problem is? We build the picture of how we really want to live, and our paradigm knocks that out of our mind. Because the paradigm's saying, you can't do this. See, the paradigm's like a group of little monkeys in your head that keep talking to you, and they keep telling you why you can't do something. The paradigm doesn't want to change. The paradigm is a multitude of habits. That's what culture is, group habit. I have traveled into many different countries and many different cultures. And you know something? When you get past the culture, people are essentially the same. We look different. We speak different languages. We wear different clothes. We eat different food. But you want to know something? We're all the same. We are all the same. We have a marvelous mind. There is only one mind. It's not a mind for the black and a mind for the white, mind for the Asians, mind for the Caucasians. That's not the way it is at all. There is one mind. Yet we all tune into the same mind. And these higher faculties, everyone has. And we can develop them. And we can develop them to a phenomenal degree. How well have you developed yours? Have you ever worked at developing them? That's what paradigm shift is all about. You see, we want you to take a serious and a conscious look at your life and ask yourself, how do you really want to live? That's what this series is all about. You're capable of doing anything you want. I want to suggest you start thinking of your income. That's an area that most people want to improve. I think it's inherent within us to want to enjoy time and money freedom. And you're capable of enjoying time and money freedom. You're capable of doing anything that you really want to do. What do you really want to do? You know, most people really don't know. If you stop the average individual on the street and ask them, what's your goal? Where are you going? What do you want to accomplish with your life? Most people don't know. It's rather sad. I'm going to share some statistics with you that are rather shocking. Do you know that 1% of our population earns 96% of all the money that's being earned? Think about that for a moment. That's almost ludicrous. As a matter of fact, if you're not familiar with it, you'll probably think I'm exaggerating, but I'm really not. 1% of our population earns 96% of all the money. How did I go from 4,000 a year to over 1 million? It was no accident. I decided that I was going to figure out what exactly did happen. And I've never stopped studying. That was 45 years ago. And you know what I found? Anyone can do it. Do you know most of the information that you're operating with that's been programmed into your paradigm is false? Oh, yeah. You see, I grew up with the idea if you're going to earn a lot of money, you've got to be really smart. Well, I knew that wasn't true because I wasn't very smart and I was earning over $1 million a year. Think about it for a moment. I grew up with the idea if you're going to really win, you're going to have to go through school. I'd gone to high school for 2 months, and yet I teach mental health to psychiatrists today. How do these things happen? Well, they happen because the person decides they're going to happen. You see, you and I have the ability to make a decision of what we're going to do with our life. Or we can let the paradigm control us and just sort of march along in lockstep type fashion. That's what most people do. You know, most people live the same. They live the way the guy next door lives. Who's following the guy next door? Who's following the guy next door? And you know something? Unfortunately, none of them seem to know where they're going. Why do they do that? Well, they don't really know. Do you know what it is? It's their paradigm. Go into a welfare area. And you know something? Almost all welfare recipients are third, fifth, and sixth generation welfare recipients. Do you know no one ever went through school in our family? When we got to a certain age, we were asked, are you going to go? And I said, no, I'm out of here. And as I started to study this material before I had any children, I just changed one question. I didn't ask them if they were going to go. I asked them where they were going to go. And they've all gone through school. Now, do you know you have the ability, through a decision, of changing your life? I'm going to ask you to stop and ask yourself, what are you going to do with your life? Do you know? Have you got it written out in a clear, concise statement? Do you know what your purpose is? Do you have a vision? Do you know what your goal is? Now, in this series, we cover all these different points. You're not going to learn how to make a paradigm shift here in 30 minutes. But if you keep studying this information, it will become as clear to you as it is to me. You see, I often say I've got license to brag about all the information I've got because none of it's mine. I have just been absolutely fascinated with why you and I do what we do, why we don't do many of the things we want to do. I decided a long time ago that I was going to be in control of my life. No one else was. And then I took a look at a globe one day, and I thought, this world isn't that big. As a matter of fact, the world's shrinking. And I decided I want my company to span the world. And today I have offices all around the world. I'm doing exactly what I decided to do. And you know something? When I decided, I had absolutely no idea of how I was going to do it. That's part of our paradigm. The paradigm we get hung up on how. Do you remember when you were just a little child? That's really when the conditioning was really moving into high gear. And you come and said, Mommy and Daddy, I want to do so-and-so. And they say, how are you going to do that? And because you didn't know how, they discouraged you. Where are you going to get the money? And because you didn't know where it was going to come, they discouraged you. I heard a beautiful answer one time when a person was asked where all the money was going to come from. He said, wherever it is right now. You see, you can attract it to you. You can attract it to you in enormous quantities. Now, this is about all we have time for today, but remember, there's no shortcuts in life. There really isn't. However, I have found that you can make quantum leaps through the transference of information and experience. And that's what this channel is all about. That's what these programs are all about. And that's specifically what the paradigm shift is all about. So I'm going to ask you to join me again in the next show, and I'm going to dig into this a little deeper. Wherever you see me, I guarantee I'm talking about one of two things. I'm talking about money or paradigm shifts. This is Bob Proctor, and I want to thank you.